We wonder, are you ready for love? Are you ready to go all the way and get married? Maybe this is your first marriage or maybe even your second marriage. Baby, what are we going to be talking about?
Today we're going to be talking about 5 signs that God may be preparing you for the one. Yes, Denver used to be my stomping ground right before we met.
Yes.
And we are at Denver Station. No, what is it?
Denver Central Market.
Central Market.
I'm not even from here and I know.
Market, yes. It's been a while. It's been, what, 2 years?
Yes.
Yeah. Denver Central Market.
And then I like this place. It reminds me of home of our farmers market back in Flint. And there's not a lot of people here this morning.
Yeah, well, it is pretty early, but it's all good. Yeah, it is pretty quiet in here, and they just have like a lot of different artisan bakers and coffee shops and meats, like everything you could think of is here. So I'm so focused on these croissants right now, it's hard to think.
Yeah, she ain't stopped looking at them since we pulled up, but we're excited. We're going to jump into these 5
signs.
5 signs. They got us preparing you for love.
What a great day.
But it's 9:48 a.m.
Still.
We mutually agreed when we were thinking about this video. Number 1 has to be, I think, first step is contentment.
Yeah, what do you mean by contentment?
Like being content in who you are, where you are, in your singlehood, whether you're getting married the first time or getting married the second or third or fourth or fifth time being married. I think you have to be content with who you are. You got to fall in love with yourself.
Absolutely, because I think when you become content in your singleness, it moves you out of this space of desperation. And that's no shade. I mean, I think we've all been there where it's like, man, I really don't like this feeling of being lonely, of being alone. And sometimes it causes us to compromise in ways that, had we been in our right mind, we would not have made the same decision.
Content.
I'm just talking about myself. I'm not talking about nobody else.
I'm just saying being content, though.
Right, but that's what I'm saying is like when you get to that point of contentment, you've moved yourself from the vulnerability of compromise. Yeah. You know, and so I think once you find yourself in that space of contentment, like I'm single and I'm sufficient. Yeah. That's a reference. Comment down below if you know where that came from.
That's funny because I don't know.
That is a reference.
I don't know.
Yeah, once you find yourself single and sufficient, you're good.
Yeah, and I think that contentment pushes away desperation.
Exactly.
You know, because I remember when before you and I got together, I was like, okay, God, I'm good. Like whatever happens, happens. Yeah. And that's when it typically happens. So I think number 2 would be self-aware.
Yes, that's major.
Yeah.
Too many people walking around here unaware.
Like not fully understanding like who they are, where they are in their life, and what they have to offer. Everybody got this saying like, what I bring to the table. It's like before you even bring anything to the table, be aware. Yeah. It's like, oh yeah, you know what you're bringing to the table, but does the person who is more suitable for you, does what you bring to the table even matter?
Right. And to that point, it's when you become more self-aware, you become aware of patterns more so than you do people. Mm-hmm. Like for me, I never really had a type, but I did have a pattern. And it was almost like I kept finding myself in the same kind of relationships over and over and over again. Yeah. Or maybe not they weren't relationships, but like people, like dating people. And when I decided to pause, let me pause on this and figure out what's really going on. I actually got a coach. I was in therapy, and I recognized, like, actually, I'm making choices and decisions based off of some things that are not healed, things that I didn't know existed within me. And once I was able to deal with those things head on, I feel like I became a totally different person. I was ready for you.
And I just think it's so important that you be self-aware, because you think you like ain't no good men. Well, they are. Are you the good woman for that good man? Or men like, man, ain't no good ones. Ain't nothing like yours, Lev. Ain't nothing like this. Stop comparing. be aware that maybe there's something you may need to work on, or be aware of the good qualities that you do have. I think we always try to fix people when they're in their singlehood, but never celebrating the awareness that I am good. I am in a good space. You know what I mean? Point too. Like, people rarely celebrate the good. They're always trying to fix something to get something, but just strengthen that which remains, which is good, and use that. So that's number 2. Let's get into number 3 real quick.
And I think I kind of alluded to it. We kind of alluded to it from number 2, and that is healing from past traumas. Oftentimes, just because we forget something or it doesn't sting like it used to, doesn't mean that we've healed from it. We may have adapted coping mechanisms and just thought processes, again, patterns that will no longer work in a new relationship. And so oftentimes, at least that's what happened for me. Once I became self-aware, I became content in my singleness. I wasn't like looking or trying to get picked. And I just sat with myself and I'm like, hey, like, what's going on with Alexis? That is when some things came to the surface that I was like, okay, I know that I need to work on this, because I don't want to have to deal with this in my next relationship. I don't want to be triggered in certain ways, and I don't want my partner to have to deal with things that don't belong to him. And so I think oftentimes when God is preparing us for the new, for the next, for love, he puts us in situations and in positions where he can address those things one-on-one with us.
I think that's cool, because even with you and I, you would say that, like, this is not your fault, this is not your battle to fight, I need to work on this. And you would go and work on it, but I was always there to support you in it. So definitely healing from past traumas. I mean, I think for me, I had to learn, and still learning, not to bring the disappointment and anger from the first marriage into this one. So learning how to let go fully is the healing of past trauma that I think everybody should be working on if you're looking to get married for the first time or the second time, third, fourth, fifth, or sixth. All right, so sweetie, what's the number 4? What would be number 4? Saving the best for last.
Saving the best for last, number 4 would be just having. We talked about the contentment in singleness, but coupled with that is still that balance of desire to be married and desire to be in relationship. Like, for me, that is what allowed me to wait well. Was all of these things coming together. So I always had that desire to want, well, not always, but eventually I came into the desire of wanting to remarry. But I knew that there were some things that needed to be done first before that happened. But the very fact that I had that desire, it just, I've always been a firm believer and stood on that word that God gives you the desires of your heart. So I'm like, okay, Lord, if this is what you're giving me and this is your will for me, then I'm with it. Like, I will come into agreement with that. And I think you had a scripture too, babe, about partnership and desire, right?
I think I did have one, but it's eluding me in this moment.
It's from Genesis, when God said, like, it's not good.
Oh, yeah. In the book
be alone.
And I took that like literal. I took that literal. I was quoting that thing that, it's not, God doesn't want man to be alone. And whether that's in marriage or community, however you take it. But for me, I took it literal. I was like, look, God don't want me to be alone. What that woman is. What that woman is. Ooh, she gonna have a beautiful smile. I knew it. And I just think that life is worth living when you have someone to live it with. Like, I'm learning that more and more. So when you talk about the desire, I desired after being divorced. I said, yo, I'm going to remarry. And I was like on it, and then sometimes your desire, if it doesn't align with God, could put you in a place of desperation. Because I want to make sure that's clear.
Yeah.
Like, just because you have the desire, make sure that you're content. Make sure you're self-aware. Make sure that you're healed. Because even though you have the desire, even though God said these things, you could push yourself into a situation that's going to be hard to get out of. You don't want to push yourself into a marriage and then have to push your way out because you were desperate instead of fully allowing the desire of God's heart to rest on your heart. I think this is a great place here to talk about the most important one out of the entire list, and it's simply grow closer with God. I know that's cliche. I know that everything is get closer with God. Everything is get closer with God. But it's so much truth and value that the closer you get to God, the more you start looking like God. And I think if I'm being real, the closer I got to God, it allowed you to see my heart.
It did. And I think, I love the scripture that says like God leaves the 99 to get to the one.
Yeah.
And I know for a fact that there have been periods in my life where that was so evident. Like, if God was chasing after me every single day, there were some days where he was loud about it.
Yeah.
And I remember my preparation season before we met was one of those times where God was so loud about his pursuit of my heart because of all of the other things we had already talked about, like that there was work that needed to be done. And God is so loving and he's so intentional that he was like, come here. Come here. And so I think God is always after our hearts, but as it relates to preparation for love, again, for marriage, there's a specific type of preparation that happens in that season when you're one-on-one with God.
Yes.
There's things that come up. There's things that there's encounters that happen that, looking back on it now, it wasn't as obvious to me then because I didn't have this video, right? I didn't have this information. But looking back on it now, like all of these things that we've talked about happen, and it happened in partnership with God.
Yeah. And I think for me, growing closer with God, having people pray for me, community, and getting me like, okay, God does want what you want, but you gotta be able to be ready for it.
Right.
When Buffy told me I need to know how to eat at a fine dining restaurant.
Right.
But I had, just preparing, and I think, if I'm being honest, I don't think I did that great of a job the first time I got married of getting closer to God. I just thought because I was in ministry, I was doing things, I was close with God, I was good. But I think it takes a level, I don't think you said it yet, but intentionality. Like making this time with God about finding love with God.
Yeah.
Not just getting closer with God for an overall sense, but like to get right. Okay, God, what about me needs to be prepared or matured for when I meet my kingdom spouse, so that my kingdom marriage can look like you. You just sit in his presence and allow him to really give you those downloads and show you like, you might want to check your attitude.
Right.
You might want to check you got a spirit of quit. We got to get rid of that quit spirit. Because as soon as things go wrong, you want to quit.
Right.
God is like, you're not ready for marriage. You're not ready for love again if you holding on to things that will sabotage you. And you can only get that. And man, this is so key because God is giving me the download as we're speaking. When you get vulnerable with God, he can have that honest conversation that you can't have with nobody else.
Exactly.
Besides a spouse. But since you don't have a spouse.
Right.
You got to get it from God. Man, this is so fruitful because for those who have not been married, let me tell y'all this tip. It will bring the worst out of you. And you gotta have someone who can love you beyond your worst. And that right now in your singleness is God.
Right.
So get in his presence and really allow him to be a corrector and say, hey, you might want to fix that. Because that ain't gonna work.
Right. Right.
That ain't gonna work. That ain't gonna work. And sometimes we're stubborn and that delays the process. So be intentional with getting in God's presence. What are your thoughts?
I think what more is there to say? You got it. You
Boom.
did that.
Thank you, sweetie. Look at me, kid. All right, guys. 5 signs that God is preparing you for love or for love again. And we want to say thank you so much for reaching this end of the video. And we're going to enjoy the rest of Denver because we got a lot to do today.
Yes.
This is just the beginning. I think we're going to be tired by like 7 p.m.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I agree.
Okay. Well, watch this video that's on the screen. We think that you would love it. And we'll see you on the other side.
Bye.
Peace out.